Thank you. Last year, Marathon Monday, the now Boston Police Commissioner, then Superintendent, ran 26.2 miles, had a great marathon, beat the time that he wanted to hit. I was standing there with my kids. I actually watched him cross the finish line, took a note of it, said to my kids, "Oh, there's Superintendent Bill Evans. I've covered him for years." And then the bombs went off. Bill Evans, he left, he turned around, went right back in and into what became a crime scene, the worst our city has ever seen. A short time ago, we both went back to where it all began. You know what's interesting is that I know you don't like talking about you, do you?
No, not really.
No.
I know that firsthand. I've covered Bill for years. He's all about the job, being a cop, and running. You have to be when you've run 44 marathons in your life. This was his 18th in Boston.
I was hoping that it wasn't true, that maybe it was just a transformer, a fire or something like that. But, you know, when I went on the street and I seen, you know, the blast and the young victims lying on the street, it all became real for me, and it's probably the worst thing I've ever seen in my career.
And you've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, 31 years.
31 years.
31 years, and, you know, we've seen some terrible things, but, you know, seeing young Richard Boy lying there, and, you know, the other two females, that was something that no one should ever have to see.
And it affected you?
Yeah, it does, especially, you know, I have three of my own children at home, and
I just saw pictures of them. They're beautiful.
Yeah, and having, you know, a lot of them always be there at the finish line. For me, when I've come across, you know, it sort of hit home. In fact, my wife Terry and my son Will were there when I came across, and when I was finishing, I was waving to them before I went across the finish line. So I just pictured that could have been anyone's family being there. And my family has always been there for me, and it was terrible to see what happened to all those victims.
Absolutely. But you had no problem going back in, even though you had just run a marathon, and you just went into this mode for 102 hours after that, correct?
Yeah, I think we were all determined. You know, we were running on adrenaline all week, and I think, you know, we felt it was personal. You know, they had blown up our marathon, they had blown up our city, and, you know, we were determined to find out who was responsible.
So we're coming up on the finish line here. Do you find it difficult?
Well, I think we all sort of go, you know, have flashbacks to that day, on what a great day it was, what a beautiful day it was.
It was a beautiful day.
Picture perfect.
It really was.
You know, I remember coming down the street after having, you know, I wanted to get under 3:40 for my qualifying time, and I did a 3:34. My wife and my son were here. It couldn't have been any better. And to look at how the day turned out and the tragedy that resulted, you know, it's just terrible to look back and think that that's what we have to talk about here.
So this is meaningful for you here?
Yeah, well, you know, I remember the memorial here in the days after the blast, the sneakers, the flowers, and, you know, it brought back a lot of memories of all the people who came here to pay the tribute, and to the victims, too. I remember the crosses for each victim, so it was special for the city of Boston. It had a lot to do with the healing after that bombing. I just can't say enough about the residents and also the men and women of my department who really stepped up to the plate.
Yep.
Didn't care how many hours they worked that week. We were determined to get those two suspects, and we did. And I thought it was a great week. You know, obviously, you know, looking back, I still have, you know, bad memories of the street, seeing those three victims out here. And I hope at least getting those two suspects brought some satisfaction to the family.
You know what I find interesting, Commissioner, is that you never say their names.
Right.
That's
yeah,
on purpose, right?
Right. Yeah.
Tell me why. I think that's interesting.
You know, being a father, you know, I just don't want to make it like we're glorifying this whole event. Everyone's saying what heroes everyone is, but people forget that it was a tragic day, and those families have to live with this forever. There's no heroes here because we lost 4 young individuals who had a lot of life left in them. So that's one of the reasons. I don't, you know, being a father and being a mother like you, Maria, you know, and being someone who's been at that finish line with their families, you know, but for the grace of God, it could be anybody.
So I loved going back there with him, and he's just so no nonsense, and And just now that he's the commissioner, he was supposed to run the marathon this year, but obviously he's going to be a little
lot
busy.
of other things he's going to be doing. But I'll tell you what, you know, he's run so many marathons in his career, but boy, what a perspective he has on the last one, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, he's a kid who grew up here,
Yep.
and he, you know, that's his marathon, so he took it personally.
No doubt.
For sure.